in 2019, the first time capsule buried by Stumpy Sanderson and his gang of mischievous working-class boys, and which was actually an old Watney's Party 7 can, was unearthed. Then in 2023, the second time capsule, which was an old Courage Jackpot Bitter Party can, was discovered. And now, Whistling 5 Anarchic Productions, in conjunction with the 1970s Cigarette Appreciation Club and Puffer Patterson's Benevolent Fund for Aging Thespians, proudly presents Series 2 of Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s stories, and the 22 stories found in that second time capsule. As narrated by Andrew Brammer. Bonjour, bon après-midi, et bonsoir. The story you are about to hear is narrated in the first person, because I, just like Stumpy, witnessed firsthand the momentous events which it describes. So, let's park up the rally chopper, dim the lava lamp, switch off that episode of Catweasel, finish up the plate of Vesta beef curry, crack open a can of Double Diamond, light up a mannequin cigar, and kick back, sit back, and listen in to the anarchic and outrageous japes, scrapes and capers of Stumpy Sanderson and his gang. For this story, we head back to 1979 for a supermarket fate worse than death. It is a sobering experience to watch with your own eyes someone's sad and terrible demise, and that is indeed what Stumpy Sanderson and I witnessed and experienced on the early evening of the last Friday before Christmas in our local Key Markets store. The small supermarket was teeming. Hordes of hair-lacquered housewives in their C&A and British Home Stores winter coats, filling their trolleys from meticulously budgeted Christmas lists, some of them accompanied by reluctant and hot under-the-collar mustachioed husbands with in-tow urchin kids. Also in the store were gaggles of various reprobates, louts, and ne'er-do-wells from some of Dunstable's upper schools. Stumpy and I were there for our supplies of bottles of Cresta and packets of Golden Wonder crisps, when we suddenly spotted Shiny Giles carrying a full shopping basket. We immediately detected that something was up, for his thin face now bore an ashen look, his dark punky hair adding to the vampiric-like quality of his haunted visage. "What's the matter, Shiny? You look like you've seen a ghost. You look like death warmed up," asked Stumpy. "I'm in big trouble," said Shiny. "My mum sent me shopping, and these are on her list. How can I go through the checkout buying these?" And, having rummaged through his shopping basket, he covertly showed us the offending pink packet. "Struth!" I shouted. "Gazooks!" exclaimed Stumpy. "I would never have guessed your mum used those. I can definitely see the problem, though. It's a nightmare scenario." "Yeah, especially with who's on the checkouts," said Shiny. Peering through the aisle, Stumpy and I now saw that operating the only two working checkouts were Mandy and Melanie Milton. Those razor-haired, razor-lipped, chiselled cheekbone twins of terror, our most long-standing and recurring foes. "Crikey, I see what you mean," I said. "Couldn't you just put them back and get them from the chemist's instead?" "I can't. They've shut early," said Shiny. "Well, couldn't you just put them back and tell your mum they didn't have any in stock?" asked Stumpy. "I daren't do that. She's desperate for them. She needs them for her big night out tonight. I'd never get away with that stunt," said Shiny. So, after further consultation over this Gordian knot of a problem, we then decided that the best solution available was for Stumpy and me to stand immediately behind Shiny in the checkout queue and shield, as best we could, the contents of his shopping basket from any prying eyes, and certainly from anyone who we may know. That way, at least, we could limit any potential sightings. We also advised Shiny to act as nonchalantly as he could, to try to pretend that this was nothing out of the ordinary. So, now all that was left was to choose which checkout queue to go to, Mandy or Melanie Milton's. Death by Black Mamba or death by Green Mamba. And then, taking our places behind a pair of old duffers, having darted in front of an innocuous husband and wife, we all took our positions towards the rear of Melanie Milton's checkout queue. As we slowly progressed up the queue, Shiny was walking his equivalent of death row, but at least he was now putting on an air of bravery and defiance. He was a veritable Sydney Carton. Then, after the old duffers had finally packed away their last loaves of Sunblest into their shopping bags, Shiny had reached the conveyor belt and started to unload his shopping basket. Arctic roll, a box of Omo washing powder, Vesta chow mein, Vesta beef curry, 2 tubs of Blue Band margarine, the offending pink packet, Finder's crispy pancakes, and a 4-pack of raspberry ski yogurts. As the conveyor belt moved up, Shiny now stood opposite Melanie, Stumpy and I immediately behind, having already loaded our bottles of Cresta and packets of Golden Wonder crisps onto the conveyor belt to shield the contents of Shiny's shopping basket as best we could. Picking up the Arctic roll and chewing slowly on her bubblegum, Melanie acknowledged Shiny, eyeing him from beneath the fringe of her razored and feathered brown hair. "Hello, Shiny." "Hello, Melanie." She casually began checking the shopping through the till. And then, picking the offending pink packet up, she gave an evil smile. "Ooh, what do we have here then?" "Oh, they're for my mum," said Shiny, as casually as possible, the colour draining fast from his face. "That's what they all say. Fancy you using these. I would never have guessed that in a million years. Don't seem to have a price sticker on them, though." "Yes, they do. It's there," said Shiny, pointing. Melanie shrugged. "Can't see one." "Yes, you can. It's there," shouted Shiny frantically, getting more desperate. "He's losing it," hissed Stumpy. Smiling even more malevolently, and to Shiny's growing horror, Melanie then proceeded to scratch off the clearly visible price sticker with her long, varnished fingernail. "I'll need to check on these," she said, and bent down to the mouthpiece of the supermarket tannoy system. "He's got to get out of there," I exclaimed loudly. "Abandon mission, Shiny." But at this very moment, a gaggle of Herberts in green flight jackets from the year below us, who had been in the next checkout queue, were now checking their change at the end of our queue, thus blocking any potential routes of exit and escape. Just before Melanie Milton spoke into the tannoy address system, Stumpy solemnly declared, "The man is finished." The sentence, which Melanie Milton spoke into that supermarket tannoy system, and which would haunt poor Shiny Giles for the rest of his Dunstable days, was delivered twice. The first time, made above the general chatter and noise of the supermarket, it resulted in a few turned heads, and then the descending of a strange hush, followed by a few sniggers as people, astonished, began to realise what had just been announced. The second time, it was followed by the most awful and cacophonous guffaws, howls of raucous laughter and hyena-like baying, and a multitude of piercing eyes focusing laser-like as one in the direction of the broken figure of Shiny Giles standing at the checkout queue. "Can somebody please check for me the price of the hemorrhoid suppositories?" As the remaining lifeblood drained from poor Shiny Giles, Stumpy and I both knew that he would now be condemned forevermore by our enemies to bear a new nickname. A nickname that would still use the term Shiny, but which would replace his surname Giles with the name of the medical affliction for which those hemorrhoid suppositories, which went through Melanie Milton's Key Markets checkout in December 1979 had been developed to treat a supermarket fate worse than death. Thank you for listening to this episode of Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories. And please don't forget to check out the other stories from Series 2 and Series 1. You can also follow Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories on Facebook, where you can keep up to date with all the news about live shows and other Stumpy events. There's also the website, www.stumpysanderson.co.uk, and the Stumpy Sanderson's 1970s Stories YouTube channel. And you can get in touch with me at andrew@stumpysanderson.co.uk. Until the next story, au revoir et bonne nuit, and keep grooving.
Yeah. This podcast has been recorded using a DIY punk rock philosophy. Yeah.